Hey guys, this is Mike Mahaffey, the old bastard BJJ guy, here for BJJ Mental Models. Back in my day, we had to walk uphill in the snow both ways to get to the academy just to learn some crappy technique from a random purple belt. You kids have it so easy because now you can just subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium and get tons of great audio courses to learn new techniques, enhance your mindset, and entertain yourself. You can even get personalized rolling reviews from some of your favorite BJJ Mental Models coaches, including me. It's like having your own seminar, you spoiled little whippersnappers. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium right now, get off my lawn, and go train.
Hey, welcome to BJJ Mental Models. I'm Steve Kwan. BJJ Mental Models is your guide to a conceptual and intelligent jiu-jitsu approach. And this week, I'm continuing with another mini episode about the strategic aspect of jiu-jitsu. This episode is going to build on the one from last week about asymmetric warfare or asymmetric advantages. Go back and listen to that one first. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can find it easily. But the idea behind that episode was basically you want to fight from a position of advantage. You want to take both physical positions in jiu-jitsu where you're better, but you also want to play to areas of the game that you're stronger at than your opponent. And a big part of getting good at jiu-jitsu and actually getting results is when you go beyond just learning and executing moves and thinking about how can I steer the game into areas where I just have a totally unfair advantage. And with that said, let's introduce this week's topic. I want to talk about a strategic concept that we call funneling. The idea is pretty simple. When you are playing a jiu-jitsu match, you want to funnel the match to the places where you are strongest and your opponent is weakest. This is not a new concept. If you study old war stories, you'll hear about people trying to funnel their opponents through a narrow pass in the mountains so that they can pick people off one by one. That's an example of funneling. You're basically trying to take the fight to a place where you have an unfair advantage. Similarly, remember Obi-Wan Kenobi warning Anakin Skywalker about how he's got the high ground? I don't know anything about actual warfare. I don't know anything about Jedi, so I'm not actually sure if having the high ground is an advantage, but for the context of that movie, let's just assume that it is. The idea is you want to funnel your opponent into a place where you are strong and they are weak. So in the last episode, we talked about how you always want to have asymmetric advantages, and funneling is the way that you get there. When you are building out a jiu-jitsu game plan, you should be thinking not just about what techniques and positions am I good at, but you should also be thinking about how can I funnel into those positions. This is often a realization that comes to people around, I would say, purple belt. I mean, it's going to vary depending on the person, but often when you're starting off on the journey at white and blue belt, you're just trying to learn how to survive and how to get stuff done. And if you get submissions, that's awesome. But maybe you don't have a cohesive plan for all of these things glued together. Once you start getting a bit more experienced, you want to start thinking about the strategy of how do I get people to the places where I am especially strong. And again, funneling is the way that you do that. So how do you actually build funnels to get to the places where you are strong? Think first about the things that we talked about in the last episode. Where do I have an asymmetric advantage? What are the things that I am uniquely awesome at? Now from there, we want to think backwards about how can I get to that place in jiu-jitsu? If I am, for example, really good at single leg X guard, that's awesome. But if I'm not actually able to get to single leg X guard, then it doesn't matter how awesome I am. And that's why we need funnels. We need a way to get to that place that we are very good at. And so if you are a single leg X guard player, but you are struggling to get into that position, what I would suggest is that you think, what are the things that I could be doing that would lend well to entering this position of strength for me? So riding off of this example, single leg X guard, if you are great at that position, but you're not so great at getting into it, I would suggest thinking about funneling to that position through things like shin on shin guard, also called instep guard. This is a really good way to get into single leg X guard quite easily. There's also a lot of ways that you can get into there from a standard Ashi entanglement. If the person stands up, often you can take that into single leg X guard. So all of this requires you to think, what is the goal that I have? What is the position that I want to wind up in? And what are the techniques and tactics that I can use to get into that position? You should be able to map this stuff out. Now, people who listen to the podcast may know that I'm not the biggest fan of trying to follow flowcharts for learning jiu-jitsu. But when it comes to mapping out your game plan, these can be powerful tools because this is how you figure out, with the goal in mind, how do I retroactively get there? All of the techniques and tactics that you're good at should lead from one to the other into a chain to the place that you want to go to. If you're good at a bunch of different guards and a bunch of different sweeps and a bunch of different passes, but they don't connect to each other cleanly, that means your funnels aren't working properly. You're missing a technique in there. You're missing something that will help you get to the place that you're good at. So again, flowcharts maybe not the best way to learn jiu-jitsu, but they can be a very powerful tool for thinking about how do all of the puzzle pieces of my jiu-jitsu game plan fit together cohesively. Some things fit together really well. We talked about shin on shin or instep guard and how well that leads into things like single leg X guard. But if you are, for example, a De La Riva guard player, you might find that it's a little bit harder to get directly into single leg X guard from there. That would tell us that you've got a hole in your chain. There is a leak in your funnel that you need to fix. And so I won't get into it here. It's out of the scope of this conversation, but there are moves that you can do that will transition you from De La Riva guard to shin on shin guard and then to single leg X guard. So you should be able to connect all of the dots in your jiu-jitsu game. If you're good at a bunch of little things in pockets that don't connect with each other, then you don't really have a funnel. And that's going to make it very hard for you to build a cohesive jiu-jitsu game plan. So there you go, funneling, just a general concept that tells us that no matter where we are in jiu-jitsu, we should have a series of things that we're good at, which can take us to the place that we want to go. Doesn't matter what position I'm in. If I'm in bottom side control, bottom mount, if I'm standing in your guard, whatever, I should have funnels that can take me to a position that I want to be in where I have an unfair asymmetric advantage over you. And what that advantage is going to be will vary from person to person. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses in jiu-jitsu, so my funnels may not be the same as your funnels. Part of the game is learning to establish your own unique style of jiu-jitsu and figuring out how to take the game to the places where you're strong and your opponent is weak. Again, this is all assuming that your goal is to win when you're in a match that matters. If we're talking about training in the training room, winning should not be our number one objective. That's when we should be focused on learning. But if you are in a situation like a competition or a self-defense situation, then you definitely want to be creating funnels that take you to the places where you know you have that unfair advantage. So I hope this was helpful. Funneling is a very powerful concept for understanding how to get from point A to point B in jiu-jitsu, where point B is the place that you really want to go to. I will put links in the show notes to the prior episode that we did on asymmetric warfare, which I think will kind of help people understand how all of this fits together. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper, I do recommend checking out our game planning series. It's a course on BJJ Mental Models Premium that walks you through the process of building your own jiu-jitsu game plan. And it talks about things like funnels and how you can use those to be more intelligent about making decisions when you're grappling. So as always, I hope this was useful. BJJ Mental Models Premium and all of our free stuff is available at bjjmentalmodels.com. I will put a link in the show notes to that as well. Thanks so much for hanging out with me here, as always, and I'll talk to you soon.